The 1970s television show Starsky Hutch was created by William Blinn and was produced by Aaron Spelling with Spelling Goldberg Productions. It was broadcast from April 1975 to May of 1979 on ABC. The show revolved around two Southern California police detectives who race around under a call sign called Zebra 3 through the streets of the fictional Bay City, California. Much of the series was shot on location in a town south of Los Angeles called San Pedro. The building that was used for the Metropolitan Division Police Headquarters is now San Pedro's City Hall. The two main characters are David Michael Starsky, played by Paul Michael Glaser. Now, he's a Brooklyn transplant and a U.S. Army veteran. His partner is Kenneth Hutchinson, also known as Hutch, and that's played by David Soul. He's a Duluth, Minnesota native, and he's a little more reserved and intellectual in his approach to his means of fighting crime. Now, the characters in this show and some of the plots of the show are really based on real-life New York City detectives Lou Tolano and John Septi. They ended up gaining a lot of notoriety because they had a real unconventional way, but a very effective way, of doing undercover police work. As the production company was involved in doing research for the series, they spent time with these two detectives in New York so they could learn their daily habits and routines. Later on, the two real detectives sued Aaron Spelling's production company, and they ended up settling out of court with him for about $10,000 apiece. Now, one of the most trademark images that you'll see in the main characters is Starsky's cardigan sweater. He's portrayed in this sweater in a lot of the still shots promoting the series. But in actuality, he only wore that cardigan sweater 3 times. There was one episode that was the pilot episode in 1975, and then there was an episode also in 75 called Terror on the Docks. And then there was the 1976 episode called Running. But there's a shot of the opening credits where he's seen in this sweater, and that's why he's famous for wearing it. He said in an interview before that he bought it in a Mexican shop in the heart of downtown LA, and that sweater was referred to as the Mexican sweater. Fans referred to it as Starsky's sweater. Now, when the series was shown in France, it was dubbed with a lot of ad-libbing, as well as very funny and often absurd phrases inherent to French culture. And these phrases had little to do with what is said in the American version. Because of that, the French version has a more comedic element to it, making the characters even more quirky and really more lovable. Now, Ken Hutchinson's character was a real health food nut. He's often seen concocting himself smoothies that are made out of almond milk, wheat germ, raw honey, and other assorted healthy items. In contrast, Dave Starsky's character was a junk food addict. He loved pizza, burgers, and hot dogs. The producers originally wanted to use a green and white Camaro instead of the red and white Ford Torino, but General Motors was unable to help them with this car, so they ended up deciding to use a 2-door Ford Grand Torino, which was bright red with a large white vector stripe on both sides. They used 4 different cars when they were doing the filming, and some of the earlier shots had red wing mirrors, except for the pilot, which had silver mirrors. The two characters, when they were initially introduced to the car by Aaron Spelling, looked at it and said, "This thing looks like a striped tomato." Hutch's vehicle was a battered, tan 1973 Ford Galaxy 500. It occasionally appeared when the duo needed separate vehicles, or they needed it for some kind of special undercover work. The problem with this was their cover was often blown because his vehicle had a humorous glitch to it. When its driver's side door was opened, the the horn would go off, instantly drawing attention to the vehicle. It was also really noticeable because of the severe clutter in the back seat. So much clutter that there was no room to transport prisoners and 2 detectives simultaneously. Now, there's a great supporting cast in this series. One of the main ones that comes to mind is Antonio Fargus, who plays the jive-talking Huggy Bear. He's the detective's confidential informant, and he's constantly giving them street information that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Their boss is the gruff, no-nonsense, but fair Captain Harold Doby, played by Bernie Hamilton. If you watch the pilot of the show, you'll notice some real memorable faces that you would know from other TV series. The first thing that comes to mind is Hope Summers, who played for years a popular role on the Andy Griffith Show. She played Clara Edwards, who is Aunt Bee's best friend. In the very first show of this series, she plays an old lady who has stuffed her car with 50 sticks of dynamite with plans to have it blow up and call attention to the poor living conditions that her and her husband are experiencing in the old folks' home they're at. Quite a difference from her role as Aunt Bee's prim and proper friend. Also in that episode, you'll see Suzanne Summers, who plays an exotic dancer and then went on to play an important role in Three's Company. Huggy Bear's role is really great in this show. He had a really immense following, and people loved him so much that they called for the producers, Spelling and Goldberg, to give him a series of his own. The second season episode, Huggy Bear and the Turkey, was the test pilot for a possible spin-off with Huggy and his friend, former Sheriff Turkey, as they become private investigators. The problem was this premise proved unpopular with the viewers, and the spin-off never materialized. In that episode, you also find out what Huggy's last name is, and that's Brown, but we still don't know what his first name is. 2 of the characters in this series were named for people from William Blenn's past. Now, if you'll recall, William Blenn developed the show, and in doing so, he had an old high school friend named Starsky, and he also knew the name of Huggy Bear from a local disc jockey that he had listened to. Now, the third star of the show was definitely the car, and they used a variety of model years for the Gran Torinos. They used models from 1974 all the way to 1976 because the body style didn't change at all during that time, or changed very little. Glaser just hated this car. He didn't like driving it, he didn't like the way it looked, and he often made the statement to his counterpart, Soul, how much he hated the vehicle, and that he was going to do everything he could to destroy the car. Several scenes show him driving the car while he's smashing the front wheels into the curbs as the car slides around corners. He did this as much as possible. But by doing all this, he made the car more popular with the viewing audience, and it really made it an icon of the show. He went on as the show progressed and after the show was over to learn to appreciate the car and accept its popularity as a necessary component of the fans' appreciation for the show. Now, the one thing they did do, they dubbed a lot of the sounds for the high-performance engine for the car. And this was because California had laws that stopped them from mechanically modifying the engines to new cars. When the pilot was successful, Spelling and Goldberg ordered 2 new 1975 red Gran Torinos for the first season. These cars were powered by 400 V8s because extra power was going to be needed for additional stunt driving scenes. The red color that it came in was Ford's paint color 2B, which was a regular production color for the 1975 Torinos. Now, not only did Paul Glaser hate the car that he had to drive, he hated playing Starsky. He campaigned vigorously to be released from his contract. He said he wouldn't have continued with the series had the series not been canceled. He had his eyes on a bigger prize. Like so many of the actors at the time, he wanted to get into directing, and he just didn't like anything about his role as Detective Starsky. He did make some attempts at directing on the show, but they weren't very good attempts. He was trying to be a little too artsy with his shots and just didn't understand the process that fit in with his show and the way the show was originally conceived. So he was completely tickled to death when the show was canceled and went off the air. That way he could follow his dream elsewhere. This show brings back a lot of memories when you watch it in syndication, and you can understand the popularity of it at the time. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.